going to get started. Kia ora koutou, everybody. I'm Gil, for those of you who don't know me, from geography. Fantastic seminar we have this morning. Momtaj Bintay Khalil, who is a PhD student at the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, as well as an assistant professor in the Department of Urban and Rural Planning at Khulna University of Engineering and Technology in Bangladesh, is going to be talking to us today about women's contribution to climate change adaptation in Bangladesh. Some work, I think, is derived from her PhD thesis. I'm sure she'll have lots to talk about. So over to you, Momtaj. Very much welcome.
Hi, Douglas. Thank you so much for introducing me and also accepting me for chairing the session. I would also like to thank Kate Turner for inviting me as a guest speaker. My name is Momtaj Bintay Khalil, and I'm a PhD candidate in Institute for Sustainable Futures at University of Technology, Sydney. So this is the last year of my PhD thesis. I'm writing my thesis and submitting to my supervisor and getting some review, and it's under the revise process and it's review under the revision. So today I will discuss some findings of my PhD thesis of a chapter. So this chapter reports a section of my PhD findings to examine women's contribution to climate change adaptation in the post-cyclone Aila in 2009 context of Bangladesh. So my share screen is showing there. Okay, so my study took place in southwestern coast of Gabura, Bangladesh, where women are highly exposed to climate change impacts. Their vulnerability is intensified due to social, cultural, and religious factors. So women's contribution to vulnerability reduction through adaptation is not appreciated by their household male members, and most importantly, also the policymakers. So the aim of my thesis is to explore this climate-affected women's contribution to climate change adaptation. So today's discussion is divided into three segments. In the first section, I shall explain the climate change context in Bangladesh and the background of women in coastal settlements. In the second section, I will present the study area, the impacts of 2009 cyclone Aila, and the methods, my research questions, and some relevant theories. And finally, in the third section, I shall briefly explain the findings and the outcomes that I found from my thesis. So, in terms of Bangladesh climate change context, Bangladesh is highly vulnerable to climate change because its low-lying deltaic morphology exposes large areas of the country to inundation and sea level rise. In the world context, here you can see the position of Bangladesh, a very small country with huge population. And historically, some common extreme events such as cyclone, flooding, and storm surges affect the southwestern coastal belt most of the time. So this is the southwestern coastal regions, and here is my study area, the red zone, which is highly affected and risk zone. So 32% of the country's total area is coastline, and almost 23% of the land is inundated by flooding. And nearly 7 million people are living in coastal areas here. And the category on cyclone Aila in 2009, which devastated the southwestern part totally, and approximately 9.3 million people were affected, and more than 500,000 people were isolated in the coastal regions, and they were left homeless. So the cyclone caused a considerable loss of life, and particularly among women and children. And after a decade of Cyclone Aila, another cyclone named Amphan, which struck last week on 20th of May. So this is another recorded cyclone in this century, and it also damaged the life and livelihoods in the southern part areas. So what is the women's situation in coastal settlements based on Bangladesh climate change context? So historically, women in developing countries are more vulnerable than their male household members to the impacts of climate change. In coastal Bangladesh, women are disproportionately affected by a range of climate impacts and by their impoverished, marginalized social settings. For example, women are confined by cultural and religious norms within domestic premises. The patriarchal society restricts women to have less access to the opportunities, such as working. They are not allowed to working outside of home. So women possesses relatively limited access to knowledge, information, education, and natural resources in comparison with men. So due to lack of access to information and technology, rural coastal women are overlooked by policymakers. Moreover, these coastal women are routinely marginalized in food security and water resource management. So they are often working as laborers, and they are not allowed to in decision-making roles such as climate policies, and also their risk in health hazard than compared to men. So women are less likely receive the critical information during cyclone. So they are always like remain less informed and more vulnerable. So despite these narratives of women's exclusion and passivity, whereas my thesis presents alternate scenarios and highlights women are active agencies in climate change adaptation. So some scholars already emphasized the climate extreme events that can trigger positive changes in gender relationship. So these women become more active in skill development and have strong coping capacity. So I argue that women have the strong capacity to contribute to climate change adaptation. So this study took place at Gabura Union. This is a small island which is connected to rivers, and this is closely connected with Sundarbans, which is the largest mangrove forest in the world context. And Sundarbans usually serves as a bioshield protection for these coastal settlements, and it's also reduced tidal surges. And Sundarbans also serves diversified livelihood resources such as fish, crab, shrimp, and honey collection to the coastal communities. So for the recent cyclone, Amphan, Sundarbans again act as a natural wall and reduced cyclone impacts as than the expected situations. So this island, Gabura, which covers 33 square miles and consists of 15 villages. So the population is about 38,000, and you can compare with Dunedin. So the population and the area is only 33 square miles. So huge population and almost 7,500 household and equal male-female ratio. So for my case study, I choose 7 villages which are more hit by Cyclone Aila, and Aila disrupted the whole island ecology, changed the livelihood structure, and also soil salinity severely damaged the croplands and devastated the local food production. So some examples are mentioned in my next slides. So these photographs were taken in 2013 after 4 years of Cyclone Aila. So there is a popular saying that the whole island turned from green to gray overnight. So you can see in the first picture how water is logging in between the embankments, and salt water disrupted the island ecology, severely damaged the croplands and mature fruit trees, and devastated all the local food productions. And in the second photo, you can see the raised level of soil salinity polluted the surface, and groundwater sources such as ponds and tubewells are totally damaged. So they are suffering with the drinking water. So the loss of local water sources forced women to travel like every day 3 to 4 kilometer walking, so for the domestic water supplies. And in the third picture, in this you can see the traditional agricultural practice, which is the majority of villagers relied, become unviable. So the local ecosystem service fundamentally changed the livelihood patterns from agricultural practice to boating and fishing. And especially it also driving population displacement, so such as male migration to cities. And in the fourth picture, we can see how children are also affected. Like children are forced to drop off from school and found engaged in fishing or carrying the water sources from a long distance. And the last picture, we can see women are also affected, like they are engaged in outside work as fishing and day laborers. So it's for the source of alternative livelihood options. So however, in 2016, when I went for field survey, I found the gray landscape is totally turning into green, and I was eager to know the reason behind. So I adopted for this research a mixed method approach, which is comprised of household questionnaire survey, structured and semi-structured key informants interviews, and some focus group discussions. So the broad research question was asked, like, what is the role of local knowledge and social capital that contribute to women's place-based adaptation in post-cyclone context of Bangladesh? And this broad research question is divided so many sub-research questions. So in this chapter, the main sub-research question was how do women contribute to climate change adaptation through building networks with NGOs and local knowledge dissemination in post-cyclone context. So to answer the research questions, the literature reviews are outlined in 4 intersectional areas. So the roles of local knowledge and social capital relations, which are acting as an asset for poor coastal communities in enabling climate change adaptation. So local knowledge is important because those population is not well educated, so their knowledge is transmitted orally and over generations, and it is often considered with their traditional or cultural knowledge. So it is important to survive in this community. And also social capital relationship is important because three forms of social capital relationship is acting over there to connect with the NGOs or to connect with the neighborhoods to survive or to maintain the social networks. So I followed three forms of social capital relationship, but most importantly, linking relationships is important in reducing the impacts of climate change through maintaining the social networks with the NGOs. And also it's connect the networks with insider and outsider in the post-Aila situation. So also gender should be considered seriously in understanding of climate change impacts and adaptive capacity, because most climate change issues and programs are not gender neutral. So female contribution is largely ignored in Bangladesh coastal context. So in search for adaptation pathways, to climate change, women need to be dependent on limited resources or place-based to secure their livelihoods. So these four intersectional areas was the main part in my literature reviews. So my findings chapter is titled Female Contribution to Grassroots Innovation for Climate Change Adaptation in Bangladesh. So this chapter is published as an article in the Journal of Climate and Development last year in 2019. So the paper, this chapter explored women's local knowledge and social capital relationship based on women's own stories in approach to qualitative methods. And here is the link of that published paper. And I think already Doc gone through this paper and he already read these things. And you can also download through this site or link. So in the initial stage of my fieldwork, a male household head offered a statement during a focus group discussion. So he's told, receiving training in the name of climate change is a wastage of time. So floods and cyclone can happen anytime. It is not in our hand. And when it will happen, it is beyond our control. So taking training on cyclone preparation is absurd. We had everyday problem to deal with. If you have the money in pocket, everything can be solved. Why not they give us money? If they want to do schooling, our women have plenty of time. We can't sit idle and learn new things like children at this stage. So we have big responsibilities. We need to find real work. So this quote illustrates several paradoxes and misconceptions about climate change adaptation. Most importantly, the quote portrays a patriarchal society where male members typically occupy the position of power. So in contrast, women are viewed to the male household members as idle and less active within the household. So women's contribution to the family that remain largely invisible to the male household members. In the context of Gabura, such crisis of masculinity is opening up opportunities for Gabura women to thrive. So in the post-cyclone period, most male household members were absent in the village, who had migrated to nearby towns and regional centers for alternative livelihood options. So male members' absence has opened up some kinds of opportunities for Gabura women to develop a range of novel adaptation strategies, such as engagement with aid agencies and built on social capital relationship with NGOs and develop some agricultural technologies. So I explored how women can become more empowering agent in preparing for climate change adaptation. So in post-cyclone Aila context, women's changing dimensions found in three areas in absence of their husband. So first, women's roles were transformed and they are significantly found to be involved in working outside of home for their food security. And in the second part, we can see women's contribution in agriculture innovation we found there. And in third, women's contribution in handmade production through mobilization and sharing of their local knowledge and built on social capital relationship. So female roles have become reversed and they started working outside of home. For example, a women participant told there are lots of reconstruction works was opened up, such as rebuilding the roads and embankment. However, because I am women and I earn 300 to 400 taka, that is 3 to 4 US dollar, half the money than a male member earns. So the supervisor says that we are women, we are weak, and so we are less productive. But you know, we do not take break for smoking every hour. So you can see in these pictures, women are involved in deep earth cutting activities, and male members was smoking over there and just sitting and watching them. So these scenarios affect me a lot during my field survey. So these kinds of loss of connection with male family member causes considerable tension with the women. So such kinds of other tension arise because of women pursue non-traditional work outside of the home. So this is totally unusual for a woman in Gabura context. So here are some examples of women's contribution in agricultural innovations. Most of these women lost everything during Aila. Now, some of them are successful example in agriculture innovation on salt-based soil in post-cyclone Aila period. So some are working as local trainer and supporting other women in their community. So they have created a common platform to share their knowledge with other neighborhood women. So they took training on some climate smart farming activities. Like here are some examples, some climate smart farming methods. So through adopting these methods, these women are trying to change their lives to solve their food problem. So a participant woman told me, my activities have changed my life. Now I'm not only a homemaker, I have created source from within home. I am doing vegetable gardening, making mats from garden leaves and some handicrafts. So I am pleased that now I can make some money for my children by selling these products with NGO supports. So my three children are now able to continue their studies in absence of my husband. So these such kinds of women are inspiring examples to other women in Gabura context or nearest the union as a self-entrepreneur or a vegetable gardener or a handmade producer. So here are some successful examples of here are some successful examples of women's contribution in a small scale handmade production after Aila. So NGOs advocated these women alternative livelihood options through train up and providing some material supports. At home with other women, they make such kinds of handicrafts and sell the products in the market through NGO support. And these items are exported to USA, these soft toys. You can see these pictures, they are making some soft toys. So they are exporting those items through the NGO supports, and they earn 50 to 55 US dollar monthly. So some women make mats and from their garden leaves and baskets, fish nets, like these kinds of things in these pictures. So they're also supporting as a economic options, and they are support to their family financially through selling these products. So these success stories resonate with our findings to reaffirm that women can be effectively mobilized for successful adaptation. So with adequate institutional support and through transform of local knowledge and new knowledge, they are doing success, and their grassroots innovation helping them to survive in absence of their male household members and after the cyclone. So based on the findings and the analysis, this infographic is produced by me. So this infographic is showing how these women are daily contributing in household level with their household activities. So they work up to 16 to 18 hours a day from morning till midnight. So one participant told me, we have no free time because we are getting up early in the morning and doing all kind of household activities and taking care of children. So they're involving in their household activities for the whole day, and also they are the primary responsible to perform the household task and water resource management. Children are also involving in these activities, and they are also doing other domestic responsibilities such as fishing and shearing activities, and they're also involved in agricultural innovations. They're practicing in their household domestic field, and also some other kinds of their domestic fields. They're doing such activities, and they are doing handmade production with sitting other neighborhood women, and they're building network with the local NGOs, and thus their economic opportunities are flourished through the NGO supports. However, these women are revealed as active agencies rather than passive recipients. So in contrast, this picture is saying a different story. So where you can see male members are found less busy. They are just found to spend leisure by gossiping and smoking and sitting idle after fishing or boating activities for hours without doing anything and waiting for the lunch preparation, which is prepared by the female household at home. So this picture, this photo also strike me a lot, how women are involving in so many activities and they're just sitting and waiting for the lunch. So I'll say the changes occurred in Gabura in three main areas. So changed gender roles, such as women started to take over those roles that their husband used to perform in the pre-Aila setting, and NGOs are played important role of rural women's movement from domestic domestic sphere to empowerment. Second, acquisition and sharing of local knowledge and new knowledge as for adaptation challenges, to see how women are influenced to utilize their own local knowledge and place-based resources as for adaptation challenges. And third, leveraging forms of social capital, how the social capital relationships plays an important role to contribute in changing women's roles through building network with NGOs and keep engaged in livelihoods-based training programs to women. So I offered in my chapter a conceptual framework that is named Informed Autonomous Adaptation. This framework describes place-based understanding and adaptation action to support female contributions, and through the mobilization and acquisition of local knowledge and social capital relationships, how the women and NGOs are involved in grassroots innovation. So a key findings of my study is how aid agencies can empower these women by attending their customized needs through home-based small-scale livelihood opportunities rather than seeking to serve everybody through more traditional aid-centric interventions. So the overall, my findings suggest that contrasting to women's previous roles, Aila stimulated women to pursue employment outside of their homes in search of adaptive solutions. Women have undertake lots of significant transformative challenges from domestic confinement, such as taking training to be empowered, whereas in before Aila, they were not involving with the local, with the outsider participants, but things has changed their situation. And women are also capitalize local knowledge and improve household finance through establishment of networks with NGOs, and women adopted new agricultural techniques on saline soils. Women have explored economic opportunities through small-scale industry. So these opportunities arose as male community members were more inclined towards city for economic purpose. So thereby creating a social and economic voids in the community that women were required to fill as their survival strategies. So in conclusion, I can say Gabura women are the homemaker. They are critical mobilizer of local knowledge and reliable mediators of forms of social capital in support of grassroots innovation for climate change adaptation. So some recommendations are from me, like NGOs and policymakers should be more involved with these women who are eager to work and who want to change their situation, and also inspired male and female members working together to remove their household relationship gaps. So the findings emphasize a need of gender-specific needs, a re-evaluation of in-situ adaptive capacities of both women and men to inform policy engagement for future cyclone in coastal communities of Bangladesh, like recently struck Amphan last week. So from my opinion, these such kinds of grassroots technologies from women, so it could be another example for the women again survive and again creating the new adaptation techniques. So such situations they are used to, but now they know how to survive and how to again reaffirm with this situation. So here are some relevant references. And that's all. Thank you. I can't hear you, Douglas.
Acha, sorry. Thank you so much, Momtaj, for that very interesting overview of your study and findings. I'm sure that lots of the participants in the seminar have some questions for you. So I think the usual situation in this case is for those of you who want to ask questions in the chat function. But if you also want to unmute and ask a question to Momtaj directly, then I open the floor now.
Am I on time? Did I finish on time?
Yes, absolutely.
Got a Momtaj. I've just unmuted myself, if that's okay.
Thank you, well done. Trying to work that part out.
All good. I just asked you to unmute me, but realised I could do it myself. Awesome. Thank you, Momtaj, for that. That was really interesting. My thoughts. I was wondering with you know, women generally having a lot of work within the home space, and with this kind of new transition post-cyclone to this kind of work more outside the home. If there was how you fit all of those things into one day, and if there were any changes to kind of roles and responsibilities within the household in order to help those women who were doing both had household responsibilities, but were also kind of doing these jobs out in their communities as well. If there's been any shift in roles within the household?
No, it's not a shifting activities. Like I discussed so many women's. For example, this woman in this picture, I passed a day with this woman, and I found how she's maintaining her household activities. Like I found she gets up early in the morning before 5 o'clock in the morning, and she's doing she had done all the household activities like cooking, washing and other things, and then she's involving with her neighborhood women to doing such kinds of activities together. So it's like they're maintaining a regular routine, and also they're involving in their domestic agricultural activities for their food production, because their husband, most of the families, they are missing their husband, because the husbands are migrated to city, so they are alone with their children. So there is no other way to survive, because nobody will not give them money. They need to survive by their own situation. So the situation stimulated these women to take lots of challenging issues and doing so many activities, and yeah, they are maintaining very well, and they are now successful women, I could say, because I passed 3.5 months in that Gabura context, and every day I went to that village, and I observed their close situation, how they are surviving. Yeah, so these things are transforming situations for these women. As not being idle or lazy at home, they are doing more works, and they are doing good. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like you say, those responsibilities at home aren't changing, and with the men being in the city, yeah, it's just interesting to see how the social responsibilities of those women, I guess, just increased in many ways. Yeah.
Also, I will mention one point, like previously, before the cyclone Aila, these women were not allowed to go outside or to connect with the outside NGOs people. But after cyclone, in some families, there is still some husband, they are working together, and initially they were not relying on those outside members, but after cyclone, they found their women are doing success. So after 3 or 4 years, they are depending on their women for their agricultural innovation, and they are working together. And those families who are working together with husband and wife, they are doing more great situation, and they're doing success. And yeah, I found some families, they are working together with husband and wife. Yeah.
Okay, we have a couple of questions here, Momtaj, from people who are living. somebody is saying ensuring food security, such as dry food, is a key role which women play during emergency situations. Have you found anything related to this as a form of emergency adaptation invoked by climate change?
Sorry, Douglas, your sound is breaking, so I can't.
My sound is off. So essentially, the person is asking, have you seen any adaptations taken by women around food security in emergency situations, particularly in ensuring the maintenance of supply of dry food under those cyclone, flooding, etc. kind of situations?
Yeah, the thing is like the emergency situation, like warning statement before Aila, these women are not very much concerned about the emergency situation, like they are not going outside of home. So they are just getting some information from their household male members. But during Aila, most of the women, they were at home and they faced this vulnerable situations. So they're just ignoring the emergency management circular because they thought cyclone can happen. It is not very much warning situation, like the warning situation like 10 number or 9 number, they were just ignoring. But when it came out, they found how this situation can be more vulnerable. So yeah, now they are concerned, their situation make them concerned. So during this recent cyclone Amphan, I found some videos and I found now people are more active. So everyone has gone to the cyclone shelter to take the shelter, and they are this time their death toll is very less, so it's like 12 or 13, but compared to previous cyclones it is more huge. So I know Douglas know these things very well. He is already doing some research on this thing. So yeah, so now the situation is changing and people are getting more informed through the technologies like over phone, and people are using Facebook media in terms of previous cyclones. So yes, the situation is changing and the emergency management is more improving situation nowadays.
Okay, thank you. There's another question here about, which is asking about one of the areas of Dunedin, which is particularly prone to coastal flooding, etc., and that is in South Dunedin. And the question is asking specifically about the way that the knowledge around adaptation to increasing salinity in soils was transmitted, and what kind of lessons there might be for communities outside of Bangladesh that are also vulnerable to these kind of changes.
Not really. In terms of coastal areas, they are facing the soil salinity during the cyclone months, but in terms of other urban areas or the like I am grown up in Khulna belt, the same area, but I lived in a urban area, so I didn't face this kinds of soil salinity. But there is some impact because we are not getting very much pure drinking water. Like most of the time, it's like saline water. So yeah, we need to depend deep water sources. But in terms of coastal belts, every water sources are damaged, like the tube wells, it's damaged everything. So they are just depending far away to collecting the water. So it's another a strong situation, like they need to collect everyday drinking water over 2 or 3 hours walking. And most of the time I found children are dropping off from school for collecting this water with their mother. So yeah, so compared to urban areas, this saline based soil is not affecting the urban areas, but how it is affecting the coastal belt mostly. So yeah, their adaptation technologies is different compared to our adaptation pathways.
Okay, I think the question is asking about how that knowledge of that increased salinity and the adaptation measures that you were outlining, such as tower farming, for example, and these types of things.
Yeah,
That was NGOs which were extending that knowledge to
yeah.
women. How did they do that?
Initially, after CEDAR, which happened 2007, so there are lots of NGOs grown up in that particular areas. So NGOs are involving these women to empowering them because they need the foods, they need vegetables, they need their everyday food. So that's why they are trying to do some saline-based agricultural activities, but these women are not very much expert about the local knowledge. They have their own knowledge because they are getting experience from their context, because they are living there over generations. So they know some, but the NGOs are extra adding their knowledge, like it's a mix-up knowledge. They are taking the local knowledge from the women's, and they're they're uh, they're doing some program activities, and women's are involving in these activities, and they know how to survive with the saline-based soil, and they are doing this agriculture innovation for the saline soil. Yeah, like this this is a squash which is very much famous in Australia, which is named as I forgot the name. So yeah, I found this agricultural innovation is very much good in size in that particular area, because it is a good saline soil based agricultural product. So yes, so they are involving, which is more based on their saline soil, and they are doing good than before, compared to before. Yeah, so it's like a adaptation with the NGOs and the women. So that's why I offered a informed autonomous adaptation. So this framework is like women and NGOs, they are more involved with these activities, and they are doing working together.
Okay, I'm going to take the chair's privilege here to ask you a question. So it seems like, of course, in these areas of Bangladesh that are prone to these types of things, of course, outmigration has always been there, particularly for men moving to cities, etc. But it seems like the cyclone Aila, increased that, intensified the tendency of this to happen, and then NGOs are coming in. Yeah. So my question is, has this created a situation where NGOs are now more active in villages which have had outmigration, not just because of cyclones, but because they have seen the impacts that this can have on women's participation in livelihood promotion outside of these coastal areas or in, etc. So in other words, has led to a chain of NGO involvement and women's empowerment in other places because of the experience of this.
I'm not very clear about your question, but I can understand, like, yes, NGOs are involving in these particular areas, and sometimes these women are making their own platform, and they are collecting other women, like their neighborhood women, and they are working together. And some of women are playing leading roles, and they are connecting with some NGOs, and they are taking the information and knowledge from the NGOs, and they are circulate other women. So the things is like everyone is not connecting with these women, with the NGOs. But some particular women who are more active, and NGOs selected those women as a local trainer or a local service provider, and they are circulating their knowledge with other women. So they are making their own platform where they share their knowledge, and they are following other women who are doing success and who are connecting more with NGOs. And sometimes, like, women are pushing the NGOs whenever NGOs are not very much inactive, but they know their situation, so they push the NGOs, local NGOs, and they are working together. Yeah, so this kind of things is really interesting to me. So a woman can want to change her situation, and she is pushing a local NGOs to work together. Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, we're almost out of time, Momtaj, unless there is any final questions from the chat, or anybody want to ask something to Momtaj before we go. Okay, well, if not, can I urge you all to take a look at the Climate and Development article that Momtaj has recently published. I think that it really extends the talk that she's given us today and gives us a really fantastic case study of the way that climate change adaptation can influence gender roles and empower women. So that's a topic which is much more broadly relevant, both within but also beyond Bangladesh.
Yeah, this one.
And I think that's where we're going to leave it. Kate, is that right?
Yes, that sounds great. If you want to close, or I can close. Thank Momtaj for her talk. I'm okay. It's on. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Momtaj, and Doug as well for stepping in to chair this. It's been really great to have you both speak for the network, and Doug with your experience working in Bangladesh as well. It's been awesome to have you be able to partner with Momtaj for this. I've been talking to Momtaj for a while now about her presenting to the network, so it's really great that we've been able to finally get her here. Yeah. And we'll have this up on the recording up on our YouTube channel that I'll send out as well, so those who haven't been able to make it this week, with it being the last week of lectures and things, can see it a little bit later on. So yeah, thanks again, Momtaj, for and all the time that you've spent to, obviously.
Like, I'm not very much familiar with the Zoom meeting, so this is the first time I am doing Zoom meeting, because with my supervisor most of the time we are connecting with through email. So maybe my voice is sometimes breaking. So yeah, because I'm not familiar. So yeah, thank you, Kate, for connecting me and involving me to share my knowledge, and hope we'll connect more in future, and with Doug also, because he's an expert on Bangladesh context, climate change context.
Yeah, no, well, you were great. The connection was good from your end. So yeah, the Zoom webinars are a nice way to make sure that it's accessible to everybody, no matter where they are. So yeah, well, okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you again for your contributions to this, and yeah, we'll talk soon. And thank you to all those who have been able to link up with us today and have some good conversations with Momtaj.
Okay, many thanks, Kate. Bye.
Nice, bye.